from what he did at Ohio State, from where he was drafted. That all of that is, it's worth mentioning and it's worth contextualizing the player as a whole, but in a vacuum, this is amazing. This is exactly what you want. You're seeing a guy who is, starting the ascension of taking over the main playmaking role for the Arizona Cardinals. How that progresses into year two, we'll see. If you compare his production to the rest of the rookie class, you see a guy who's top 5 in receiving yards, top 5 in touchdowns, top 5 in targets. He's right in that ballpark of where you want to be, and he's also 5th on PFF among all rookie wide receivers. So again, is it exactly what you expected? Did you expect him to blow the rest of the class out of the water? Yes, probably, but I still think we're kind of within that range of what is to be expected and what we're happy with. The Arizona Cardinals coming off an 8-9 season in 2024. This is a good start to a rebuild. All right. Obviously, 2023 was that first rebuilding year. Arizona Cardinals made a lot of moves in that draft, moving back, setting up for a big 2024 draft. And we're going to talk about it after one season. Look, I think we're looking at a draft class that has a chance to be historic for the Arizona Cardinals. A lot of guys that have gotten some good work in, got starting roles, really started to put together good snaps down the stretch for the Arizona Cardinals. Look, it's early. This is a one-year review of the Arizona Cardinals 2024 draft class. They had 8 picks in the top 105 picks of the draft. I didn't realize that, or I at least didn't remember that last season. So going back and looking at this draft class after 1 year, it was really interesting to see the amount of talent that they have on their team, the amount of production that they got. We're going to go through all of that today, but man, just as an overarching theme for this video, I just want to say, really excited for what the Arizona Cardinals are doing. Arizona Cardinals are in the second year, or just finished the second year of their rebuild. I would say they probably overachieved compared to what the expectations really were for the Cardinals in 2024. Yeah, they were just an average team this year. You break it down, they're 12th in points per game, 11th in yards per game, 21st in passing yards per game, 7th in rushing yards per game, 15th in points allowed, 21st in yards allowed, 10th in third down conversions, 14th in red zone efficiency, 18th in sacks allowed, and 13th in sacks gotten. Whatever. That's the definition of average. So you compare it to the rest of the NFL, obviously just all those numbers right in the middle of the NFL. So that is what it is. But compare it to what the Arizona Cardinals were last year, or what really I think most people were expecting from them this year. Awesome production. Let's go ahead and get into their 2024 draft class. Got to start it off with Marvin Harrison Jr., drafted 4th overall out of Ohio State. Anybody watching this video knows everything there is to know about Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't know how much context I can really add to a pick like this. 22.2% target share in the offense with 114 targets, 82 receptions, and 885 yards. I mean, look, he had a solid rookie season. I think it was probably a little bit lackluster than what I think some fans were expecting, what I was probably even expecting. I would have expected him to go over 1,000 yards, but that's just the expectations from his dad, from what he did at Ohio State, from where he was drafted. That all of that is, it's worth mentioning and it's worth contextualizing the player as a whole, but in a vacuum, this is amazing. This is exactly what you want. You're seeing a guy who is, starting the ascension of taking over the main playmaking role for the Arizona Cardinals. How that progresses into year two, we'll see. If you compare his production to the rest of the rookie class, you see a guy who's top 5 in receiving yards, top 5 in touchdowns, top 5 in targets. He's right in that ballpark of where you want to be, and he's also 5th on PFF among all rookie wide receivers. So again, is it exactly what you expected? Did you expect him to blow the rest of the class out of the water? Yes, probably, but I still think we're kind of within that range of what is to be expected and what we're happy with. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to their second first-round pick in the class, Darius Robinson out of Missouri, the edge defensive tackle prospect. He's kind of a tweener. That's why he ends up in this range. Unfortunately, injury keeps him out for the majority of the season, which is a huge bummer for a team that, if you look at their front seven, doesn't have a ton of playmaking, difference maker type guys that I think the average fan would know about. So he could have been a big part of that. He does get in the last 6 games of the season. I don't know what to expect for this dude. This is one of those guys that for me, when he was drafted, it was one of the first big surprises for me in the first round. I'm not a hater by any means. I just didn't really expect the tweener defensive tackle edge guy to get drafted as early as he did. I always thought he had a role in the NFL. That's certainly not an insult by any means. I just was a little bit surprised to see him go in that first round range. But you go back and look at the draft, and yeah, I mean, it starts to kind of fizzle out as far as defensive linemen that were going to have an impact in the NFL early on, and he was definitely a name that people were going to be aware of. With that said, let's move on to the sophomore season and see what he can do with pretty limited starts and pretty limited production early on in his career. The Cardinals have a ton of picks, so if you are still with me, this is going to be a longer video than even I anticipated as I was recording this, but I'm going through it, and I don't want to leave any of these guys off. I don't want to be disrespectful to this draft class, so we're just going to go through it, all right? The next guy, Max Melton out of Rutgers. This is an outside corner that's going to be asked to do a lot in this defense, right? So the Cardinals clearly took the approach of moving him along fairly slowly, getting him adjusted to the NFL, because that outside corner position is very difficult. He was, I think, a little bit of a project as far as what you would expect to see year one coming out in the second round out of Rutgers. This is not a nickel corner who's going to be able to start day one. This was an outside corner who just was going to have a little bit more responsibility, was going to be expected to hold up against elite wide receivers in the NFL. So yeah, of course, it's going to be a slow process for him, but it's worked out pretty well so far. If you take away a Chargers game where he gave up 145 yards on 9 receptions, he allowed just 20 receptions and 225 yards the rest of the season. Not a huge sample size by any means, but again, played in every single game, started 3, and if we take what we saw down the stretch from him, especially those last 2 games, and kind of project it to next year, I think we have a starting outside corner for the Arizona Cardinals. That's a slam dunk pick in the second round, so we're super, super happy with that. If that is the projection, if he stays on that path, if we see him lock down that starting cornerback role, we're really, really excited for this. Of course, again, I always like to keep it in context. What did we need from this draft class? We didn't need guys that could start day one. We didn't need guys that were going to be impactful year one. We needed guys that year 2, year 3 could hold up and have an important role in their position or in the team as a whole. Moving on to the first of 4 third-round picks for the Arizona Cardinals, Trey Benson, running back out of Florida State. And look, this is a guy who just never really carved out a role for him. I was a little bit surprised by that just because James Conner, older guy, I expected Trey Benson to really dig into that snap share, and I thought he would kind of down the stretch at the very least earn a bigger and bigger role. That never happened. And that's a testament to James Conner, in my opinion. James Conner was awesome down the stretch. James Conner was awesome all year. That's just the reality of where the running back room was in 2024. We'll see if Benson can carve out a little bit more of a role moving forward. It'll be interesting to see what the Cardinals actually think about Trey Benson. Right now, you look at his production, just not enough to really go off of from me from this perspective. I remember seeing a handful of snaps, a handful of runs throughout the season. Not enough for me to make a projection. I know he got hurt down the stretch, so we'll see if that impacts what the Cardinals decide to do, but this is going to be a historic running back class. The 2025 draft class will be. So if the Cardinals take a running back in the first 3 or 4 rounds, I would say we kind of know what to expect from this Trey Benson pick. If not, Trey Benson probably pencils in as the backup next year, and we run it back again with the same running back room. I'm fine with either decision the Cardinals make. I don't know what to expect with that yet. Moving right along to Isaiah Adams, guard out of Illinois. This is another dude similar to Max Melton for me. He shared snaps throughout the start of the season until he got the opportunity to start in Week 14, and he has held on to that starting job throughout the rest of the regular season. This is a guy who I think could probably pencil in as the starting guard in 2025. Hernandez ended the season on IR and is an impending free agent. I would expect the Cardinals to go the cheaper and younger route with an Isaiah Adams. Third round, drafted a starter for 2025 in the offensive line. Amazing. This draft is looking really, really good for what you wanted the draft to be to what it's looking like right now at the end of the regular season. After the season's done, where are we at? I'm super excited. This is just another example of a guy who could have really, really impactful role on the offense next year. That's what we want to see. 11 picks later, the Cardinals decided to go back to Illinois, draft another player that would play a lot on the offensive line, tight end Tip Ryman. This is a guy who was primarily a blocker, solid physical tight end. He had a role in the offense. Obviously, the offense didn't use two tight end set a ton, but it looks like he was the tight end 2 for this team. Mainly a blocker, was not utilized much in the passing game, just having 6 receptions all season. But that's to be expected when you have Trey McBride, who was coming off the second kind of blow-up season of his career. He's looking like an ascending superstar. Tip Raymond going to slot in as that main H-back, blocking tight end, fullback throughout the draft process. He basically said he would do whatever the team asked of him, and it looks like he definitely carved out a role for himself, playing in every single game during the regular season. This is kind of a tough guy for somebody like me to look at, because I'm not a guy who was paying a ton of attention to the blocking tight end for the Arizona Cardinals. Just as a Dolphins fan, as a guy who tries to watch every game, that's something that kind of blew a little bit under my radar. But going back, looking at him, seems like the coaches love him, seems like the players love him. This is a locker room guy, physical, hard-nosed, character dude that they got in the 3rd round. Looks like they're really, really happy with that. Moving on to the last pick in the 4th round. Unfortunately, this is not a guy who got to have a single snap in the 2024 regular season. Cornerback Elijah Jones out of Boston College was unfortunately injured in the preseason finale and spent the entire season on IR. So just not much to say there. Let's go ahead and close this video out with safety Dadron Taylor Damerson, the 105th pick in the 4th round. Another guy who I think is going to have a really big impact in 2025. If you look at the snap breakdown, according to PFF, played all over the field, mainly in the box and at free safety, but spent a little time at slot corner. So a dude who really had an impact this year on some level, but another guy who I think could carve out a bigger role for himself next year. All right, guys, that is all I got on the Arizona Cardinals 2024 draft class. Really, really excited to see what the Cardinals can do moving forward. This is a class that looks to be a huge hit for the Cardinals, from the top end talent and obviously Harrison Jr. and some of the other big names that they got in the 1st and 2nd round. Those are looking like guys that are going to have a really big impact. And then you move down the board, 3rd round was a really big round for them. They got a lot of guys that it looks like at least a couple of them are going to have a huge impact in 2025. And then, of course, I mentioned the safety, where I think you could definitely say a lot about him as well, as far as a guy who could develop. We'll see. All right, guys, that is all I got on the Arizona Cardinals. There were 4 picks in the later rounds that just didn't have a big enough impact to really mention. 2 of them cut, 2 of them still on the team, but that is the meat of this draft class. Really good draft class after 1 season. Now, this was always going to be a class that was going to be defined in year 2 and year 3. It's really, really early. That's what this video always was. So probably a too early look at this draft class, but I always think it's interesting after year 1. Where are they at? Where are they going to be moving forward? Doing this video on every single team in the NFL. So if you're interested in any other teams and you made it this far, you should definitely like and subscribe. All that good stuff. It really means a lot to me. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this draft class. Are you excited moving forward to be a Cardinals fan? I would be. I mean, you can tell right here, I'm a Dolphins fan, and I'd probably trade. I would. Can't do that. I don't know why. Just, it's in my soul. Can't do it. But all right, guys, we're going to call it right there. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.